discussing whether nicotinic acid as on date has any place in the management of dyslipidemia or not. Is it taking the last breath? When a subject is controversial, then one cannot hope to tell the truth. But I will speak only the truth. One can show how one came to hold whatever opinion one does hold. So I will let you know my own opinion. One can only give one's audience the chance of drawing their own conclusions as they observe the limitations, prejudices, and idiosyncrasies of the speaker. So this is a disclaimer, and you are free to draw conclusions from my presentation. So this will be the flow of my presentation on niacin. First, we will see the effects. Niacin has got a very broad effect on lipid profile. HDL increases by 20 to 35%. Triglyceride also decreases by 25 to 30%. LDL also decreases by 10 to 25%. It also lowers lipoprotein A, and it is very cheap. And we also know that low HDL is the most common dyslipidemia in India, followed by high TG. Nicotinic acid or niacin raises ApoA1, and we know that ApoA1 is the most important part in an HDL molecule, because whatever benefit HDL gives to us, it is through ApoA1 only. ApoA1 reaches the atheromatous plaque, and from there combines with cholesterol in the atheromatous plaque, takes them to the liver and disposes them off to the liver. So this is the mechanism of action, which obviously is very interesting. Side effects. So adverse effects are many, but they can be managed. Flushing. Flushing obviously is more with immediate release nicotinic acid and during initial doses of extended release preparation. It is because of the release of prostaglandin D2 and prostaglandin E2 from Langerhans cell in the skin and macrophages. This can be minimized by proper dosing and administration after meals at bedtime. Aspirin also has been found to decrease the flushing, but we are using low dose aspirin in such cases most of the time, so we cannot give aspirin in higher dose. Avoid, we should not take it with alcohol or hot drink, because then also the flushing will increase. Second adverse effect is impaired liver function, which is sometimes seen with extended release therapy, but very rarely with immediate release. So if we are giving extended release nicotinic acid, we should watch the LFT, and if the values of transaminases is more than 2 to 3 times upper limit of normal, then we should consider stopping the drug. Diabetes, hyperglycemia, this is a very, very important side effect. 1% increase in 6 weeks, but return to baseline by 6 months. This is important. AIM-HIGH trial. In AIM-HIGH trial, extended release nicotinic acid was given to low HDL and high TG patients. 5% rise initially was there from baseline, and it returned to baseline after over 2 years. So hyperglycemia here is transient. In AIM-HIGH trial also, there was no difference in the development of diabetes in the two treatment groups. On the other hand, the HPS2 Thrive showed a statistically significant development of diabetes in the niacin laropiptant group. So we have to be cautious. Oh, sorry. So it was an automatic system, I'm sorry. Adverse effects, GI upset due to increased gastric acid production can be managed by splitting the daily dose, taking it with meals. Acid blocking PPIs will also help. Hyperuricemia, uric acid level should be monitored routinely, and clinician must weigh the risk and benefit. Rash. Some persons may experience rash with flushing, which usually clears with the development of tolerance. So these are the side effects. Side effects we need to keep in mind. Now, what is the difference between immediate and extended release? Immediate release causes more flushing, therefore it should be taken after meals, and gradually the dose should be increased. Inositol nicotinate is a preparation where flushing is much less. Immediate release, they cause less hepatotoxicity, but higher dose is to be taken to the tune of 3 to 6 grams per day. Extended release preparations, on the other hand, are better tolerated. Lesser dose is required, 1 to 2 grams per day, OD at bedtime. Why bedtime? To match the time of peak hepatic lipid synthesis. But this preparation is slightly more hepatotoxic, but lesser dose is required for lipid control. So this was the difference between immediate and extended release. Now, initial positive trials. These are very old trials which have given us positive effect on MACE. This is a trial which was done in 1975, where when the drugs were very less, we did not have the statins, the role of beta blockers was there, but we didn't had so many drugs which we have now. But here, niacin was found to give statistically significant effect on non-fatal MI, stroke, and CV surgery. This is the trial is very old, but it is not fake. Similarly, Stockholm ischemic heart study was a 5-year prevention study. This also is a very, very old study. And here the total mortality decreased 26% in the drug treatment group, but niacin was used along with clofiprid. So the positive trials are not rock solid. This I accept. Now the negative trials. AIM-HIGH trial. AIM-HIGH trial was a negative trial for niacin, और बहुत इसने niacin की मार्केट को खत्म कर दिया. AIM-HIGH trial took patients with low HDL, high TG, and we know that low HDL, high TG is the combination where we will like to use niacin. So they took the right patients. One group was given Simva, the other group was given Simva plus niacin. It was stopped early. AIM-HIGH trial was stopped early because lack of efficacy was seen. Only 4 milligram per deciliter increase in HDL was seen at 3 years. So at 3 years, giving niacin is increasing HDL by only 4 milligram per deciliter, and no incremental benefit was seen if LDL was at 70. Also, there was increased risk of ischemic stroke. Now, what are the problems with AIM-HIGH, which we should keep in mind? First, Simva alone raises HDL. It raises HDL more than Atorva. Niacin alone raises HDL by 20-35%. And here, HDL is rising only 4 milligram per deciliter. There was no group where niacin was given alone. So it was Simva alone or Simva plus niacin. There should have been another group where niacin monotherapy should have been used. So there was no group on niacin alone, and the placebo in the Simva arm contained crystalline niacin 50 milligrams. So the study design was underpowered to assess niacin benefit. William Borden, the lead investigator of the AIM-HIGH trial, said after the trial that the issue of niacin in CV event reduction remains unsettled. He did not negate the role of niacin conclusively. Now, 75% of patients, he said, receiving blinded treatment were taking statins or other lipid lowering agents for past 3 to 5 years. So they were not drug naive. And placebo tablet, as I said, contained 50 milligrams of niacin. So he said, we haven't had the right designed trial. Then came a study where it was shown that if we give statin along with niacin, then statins, they decrease the cholesterol efflux from the atheromatous plaque, and niacin is doing just the opposite. So we are using two drugs with just opposite mechanism of action. So this is the problem with AIM-HIGH trial. Now, what are the problems with HPS2 Thrive? See, I know I am stirring a hornet's nest. I know I'm going to get a very big bashing from all of you, but I will brave it. No problem about it. I will see. Now, HPS2 Thrive, here two groups were taken. One group was Simva plus ezetimibe. The other group were put on Simva plus ezetimibe plus niacin laropipran. HDL rise was 6 milligram per deciliter. LDL decreased 10 milligram per deciliter. Triglyceride decreased 33 milligram per deciliter. But the risk of diabetes was high. So the trial was a negative trial. We see that the major vascular events, there was no difference between the placebo arm and the niacin laropipran arm. These were the side effects which were significant. Diabetes complication, new onset diabetes was statistically significant. Infections, GI disturbances. So these were the major adverse effects. So this prompted Professor Jane Armitage, who was the lead investigator of this trial. She said, she is an epidemiologist. She is not a clinician. So in Oxford, she is an epidemiologist. She said, in my view, there is no therapeutic role for niacin in current clinical practice. What are my problems with HPS2 Thrive? See, the baseline HDL in HPS2 Thrive was already normal, was 44. So they should have taken lower HDL group. Baseline LDL in HPS2 Thrive was already low. It was 63 milligrams per deciliter. They should have taken high LDL patients. We have seen that statins do just the opposite what niacin does. And what was the intention of HPS2 Thrive? See, Merck had sponsored this trial, and they were absolutely sure that niacin is going to make a big comeback. They had done their homework, and they were sure that niacin will do wonders. But their idea was to make niacin patentable. So they cannot patent the existing niacin. They have to do something else. So instead of using inositol, they thought that we will use a prostaglandin inhibitor, laropipran, and then we will patent it and we will earn billions and billions. So when the intention is not pure, so most of the time results are also not up to the mark. And there may be that prostaglandin inhibitor, laropipran, is working as an antagonist. It is maybe. So ideally, the group which should have been taken in HPS to thrive was low HDL, high dense LDL, and high TG. If we take this group and we give them niacin monotherapy, then what the result will be, that we have to believe. After these two trials, Forbes, the business magazine, the best business magazine of the world, it published an article where it said that some experts defend niacin for heart disease after failed study. Forbes mentioned that trials did not teach us about niacin. They taught us statin, high dose plus niacin. They did not teach us ApoA. So these are it was an article. Obviously, it was, I cannot quote it because it is a commercial book.
Please hurry up, sir.
Okay. Now, consensus after negative trials, adding nicotinic acid to statin therapy in persons who are already at their LDL-C goal does not improve clinical outcome. So niacin was unceremoniously removed from the guidelines. So this guideline said niacin has got no role. This guideline also said that niacin has got no role. Again, 2019 also, niacin, they said no role. Then came a meta-analysis which showed that niacin may have a role as monotherapy drug for lipid control in statin intolerant patients, or if we want to avoid drug interactions. It may have a role, the meta-analysis said. And the meta-analysis showed that the risk reduction in ACS, stroke, and revascularization was significant. Role in NASH. So there are studies these days which are coming up and are showing good effect of niacin on NASH. It is decreasing fibrosis and steatosis. So these are some of these studies. And one company has already taken patent for its role in NASH in 2015. The patent has been granted to them. So to conclude, respected seniors and dear friends, niacin was the first dyslipidemic agent to reduce both cardiovascular disease and mortality. It has got a wide breadth, decreases TG, LDL, lipoprotein A, increases ApoA. Combining niacin to statin is a bad idea. And AIM-HIGH therapy and HPS to Thrive trials were not powered to assess pure niacin monotherapy. Well-designed trials are needed to learn about niacin monotherapy in patients with low HDL and high TG, but no pharma company will pump money in the off-patent drug. It may have a role in hepatic steatosis. Let us be open to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And this is Bhishma, this is Karna. And Karna said, I will not fight as long as Bhishma is there. So niacin is saying, I will come into play once you remove statin from there. So this is what niacin wants to convey. Thank you.